Congressman, it's good to see you. We've got news coming in. This one's pretty stunning. It's shocking and disturbing. One of the 18 scientists who signed that letter that appeared in the journal Science saying, yeah, investigate COVID-19 and whether it escaped from the Wuhan lab, Alina Chan is now saying scientists refuse to admit to that possibility because they don't want to be associated with Donald Trump. They're basically saying that the media, let me back up. The media effectively portrayed Trump as a racist, so these scientists don't want to be associated with, quote, Trump's racist rhetoric, the so-called Wuhan virus and the like. So these are scientists now not coming forward. What do you say?
Well, any scientist that conducts themselves in such a manner is acting more like a religious zealot than a scientist. And in this case, the religion is one of unmitigated anti-Trump ideology, which had the practical effect of distracting our attention away from investigating the lab, thereby giving the Chinese Communist Party a pass on unleashing a pandemic that upended millions of lives and ended millions of lives across the world, and ultimately eroded public trust in actual scientists and public health. And that's a tragedy. That has set us back as a country. And my hope is that we can learn from this and move forward to get to the bottom of this pandemic and hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable for its massive, massive cover-up, and then demand better from our own government. This was the biggest intelligence failure since 9/11. And the fact that we had ethically conflicted scientists spinning our own intelligence community should tell us that we have a huge, huge problem here.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says that, quote, the mainstream media and tech companies helped cover up the possibility that this was a lab accident. We had 3 Wuhan lab workers getting sick with COVID symptoms in November of 2019. They were hospitalized. Democrats are supposed to be the party of science. But is the media, big tech, and Democrats putting politics ahead of science? How many more people died because they wouldn't admit this virus was so lethal, so contagious, and had gain-of-function, capabilities there?
Well, think about it. If we had known in early December when our CDC offered to send our folks over there to investigate the lab, if we had learned key things about the virus back then, we could have understood that perhaps we could have known that there was asymptomatic transmission from humans to humans. We would have had an entirely different public health approach if we had had more transparency on the front end and been able to actually investigate the lab leak hypothesis and the idea that this was a virus that was genetically modified at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And so it's hard to quantify precisely how many lives would have been saved, but I can guarantee you we would have had an entirely different approach. And I can't help but think it would have been far more successful than some of the disastrous shutdowns we saw.
Let's stay on that for a second because, let me back up. Even CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, is saying, yeah, he thinks it did leak from a lab and it should be investigated because this virus, basically when viruses jump from animals to humans, it kind of sputters along, takes a while to infect. This COVID-19 exploded. He's saying it came out at 90 miles an hour and all of a sudden just started infecting wildly around the world. So that to him is gain of function. So again, whether or not we find out what exactly happened is an issue. And you pointed out lockdowns and, Governor DeSantis of Florida is saying we can't go through shutdowns and lockdowns again the way they were handled. Let's take a listen to the governor here. Watch this.
These lockdown states, we got to make sure this doesn't happen to our country again. I mean, the default should be freedom. And then if you have data to support policies, then you have to have a reason to do it. And I think what ended up happening is you had the 15 days to slow the spread. And that just kind of turned into a perpetual lockdown in states other than like Florida and Georgia, who really fought to get everything open. That can't be the way it is.
And now the governor's pardoning people in Florida for violating COVID-19 shutdown rules. He's lifting that, including a gym owner who faced jail time at one point. Your response to the governor here?
Well, I agree completely with Governor DeSantis. The fact is we went from 15 days to slow the spread to avoid overwhelming the hospital system, and then suddenly the goalposts changed to we're going to stay shut down until this thing disappears entirely. But that was never how it was supposed to be intended. And just think about the cost to our kids, the kids who are already struggling to read at grade level, for example, who just lost a year of educations because the teachers' unions exploited the crisis to keep those schools shut down. We are going to have to go a long way to getting those kids back to where they were before and then fixing the learning loss. The cost has been immense. The cost of mental health to our children, all because we bungled the public health response and because too many people politicized what was supposed to be a scientific approach.
Congressman Mike Gallagher, it's terrific to have you on.